We begin by seeing a woman running scared through a cornfield. She is visibly panicked, looking back as if something is chasing her. Amid her desperate running, she trips and falls. She looks around searching for help or a route to escape. Gradually, a dark figure approaches, wielding a scythe. Trembling with fear, the woman manages to get up and starts running again. After a few steps, she makes a brief pause to catch her breath when suddenly a voice calls her name. Immediately she responds, asking for forgiveness. But before she can finish the sentence, she is struck by a scythe blow to the abdomen. Then the day breaks, and we see the field under the sunlight. We meet John Rollins, who is quite worried about this year's harvest. The crows are destroying the entire crop. John decides he needs to do something to avoid losing his harvest, as it is important to pay the family's bills. Then we meet his family, consisting of his wife Mary, his daughter Lindsay, and his son Michael Rollins. During the night, John is sitting at the table doing the accounts. Mary shows up and tries to cheer her husband up, inviting him to go to bed, but John declines. The next morning, John and Lindsay go to the fertilizer depot. John greets the attendant Randy, who tries to warn him that his boss wants to speak with John. But John ignores him and asks him to put the fertilizers on his account. Randy, not wanting to offend in front of Lindsay, agrees, but soon his boss appears and calls John to talk. Shortly after, John leaves furiously and heads home. John walks among the dried cornfields infested with crows. He tries to scare the birds away and observes the destroyed feet, visibly frustrated with the failed crop. Later, he enters an old barn filled with junk, rummaging through old tools until he finds a small door hidden behind straw bales. Forcing the wall, John discovers a hidden hole where he finds an old scarecrow covered by a dark tarp. He pulls the tarp back to reveal a figure with a carved wooden face and symbols etched on its chest. As John drags the scarecrow out of the barn, covered in dust and cobwebs, his son watches him with a worried look. He approaches slowly, stopping a few steps away. In a low, hesitant voice, he asks if his father really plans to put that in the field. John says he has no choice, that he needs something to scare the crows, and that the scarecrow seems to have worked in the past. The boy shakes his head and firmly states he doesn't like that doll, that it looks strange and gives him chills just to look at it. He insists that he feels there's something wrong with it, and that his father should burn it or throw it away. John pauses for a moment, stares at the scarecrow as if pondering, but soon takes a deep breath and says it's just wood and cloth, that there's nothing wrong with it, and that everything will be fine. The boy lowers his head without saying anything else, clearly uncomfortable. During the night, it becomes evident that something strange is happening. In the barn, the doors begin to open by themselves, creaking in the silence. The next morning, while having his coffee, John notices the barn doors are open. Worried, he rushes to check if any corn is still left. Arriving there, John discovers that all his remaining corn has been lost. After suffering losses, John begins to pray, asking God for a way out of his situation. Suddenly, his neighbor, Jude Weatherby, appears and introduces himself. He comments that he is working on the neighboring farm and offers John a pack of beer as a welcome gift. John mentions the problem with the crows, and Jude agrees, saying how bothersome those birds are. Jude notices the scarecrow, and John reveals that he wants to get rid of it, as he will need at least 50 of those to protect the crop. Jude advises John to place the scarecrow in the center of the cornfield, assuring him that this will help solve the problem with the crows. In the next scene, he drives a tall stake into the middle of the cornfield and ties the scarecrow to it with old ropes. As soon as the doll is raised, the wind suddenly blows, and the crows disperse immediately. John observes this with astonishment and relief. Soon after, John begins to hear noises of a girl running through the field. He walks through the crop searching for her, and at first thinks it's his son Michael. Visibly scared, he returns home and asks his son if he was playing in the field, to which the boy responds, no. John decides to spend some intimate time with Mary, his wife, taking the opportunity to relax and forget his worries. The next morning, he finds several dead crows scattered on the ground of the farm. Walking to the scarecrow, he finds even more dead crows in front of it, as if some mysterious force was protecting that place. Then a man named Chapman arrives at John's farm, dressed in formal clothing and speaking coldly with John. He comments on the accumulated debts and suggests that perhaps the best way out would be to sell the property before the situation worsens. John denies Chapman's proposal and states that his property is thriving. He mentions that the crows are dying and that his luck is at its peak. Right after Chapman leaves, John continues collecting the crows when he encounters that same blonde woman from the beginning, now refreshing herself with a water bottle. He approaches slowly, but ends up tripping over one of the watering cans on the floor, accidentally activating it. The woman, however, seems unfazed and begins to take off her clothes. As John watches everything, she notices his presence and looks at him, causing him to quickly run away. He arrives home, sees that the water pump is working, and rushes to kiss Mary. During the night, Chapman returns to John's property. Upon answering a call, he speaks on the phone with contempt, calling John an idiot and saying that he will soon give in. He then places a mortgage sign at the entrance to the farm, a clear symbol of financial pressure. Afterward, he enters the cornfield to relieve himself. Meanwhile, an old scythe is seen being dragged slowly across the ground, creating a tense atmosphere. Chapman starts hearing strange noises and cautiously walks to investigate. Suddenly, something springs up to attack him with a strike, but he manages to escape by running. Upon reaching the road, Chapman trips and is hit by a passing truck, ending his fate brutally. The next morning, while John prepares coffee, he notices through the window a police car approaching slowly. Sheriff Milton enters the house and begins asking direct questions about John's last conversation with Chapman. John firmly answers that he spent the whole night at home with Mary. Mary confirms her husband's version but asks curiously why the visit. Then, with a serious expression, Milton reveals that Chapman was found dead. After explaining that he was run over near their house, the sheriff says goodbye and leaves. John remains thoughtful, and a certain discomfort takes over him, causing him to not pay attention to what Mary is trying to say. John begins his own investigation through the field and soon finds a large sum of money and a gold watch buried under the scarecrow. He observes the watch with suspicion when suddenly he hears the voice of a little girl singing among the rows of corn. Looking, he sees a shadow quickly running through the field and doesn't hesitate to chase after it to investigate. A scream echoes very close, causing John to flee in terror from the cornfield. As he tries to recover from the scare, Jude appears and touches his shoulder, nearly giving him a heart attack. Jude asks what happened, and John questions him if he believes in ghosts. Jude responds by asking what John saw, but he explains that he didn't see anything, he only heard the voice of a little girl. Then, John shows Jude the belongings of Chapman. Jude asks if that could be his, and John confirms, stating that he saw him yesterday and noticed the watch. Jude comments that Chapman was a lucky man and suggests that John sell the watch. John refuses, saying Mary wouldn't approve. John returns home, grabs his car, and heads to town. Upon arriving at the fertilizer depot, he chooses 2 bags to buy. Randy, the attendant, warns John not to complicate things for him. John then pulls the money from his pocket to pay. Randy, in a playful tone, challenges John to guess the weight of the bags. Surprisingly, John guesses the weight correctly with great luck, and everyone around congratulates him on his accurate bet. During the night, John is washing his hands when he hears Mary talking to Tommy. She comments that John seems different, saying he has been acting strangely. John observes everything from a distance while Tommy tries to flirt with his wife, but he holds back, even with a look full of rage. Mary tells Tommy to leave, and John continues watching their conversation with a furious expression. Then Mary comes out and acts naturally with her husband. John seizes the moment to start a more intimate conversation with her, opening up about his difficulties and saying he's willing to change. Maria approached, smiled, and kissed him. Later that night, John cannot resist and grabs a beer, falling back into his old vice. He decides to spend some time sitting on the porch, thoughtful, while in the distance the scarecrow seems to watch him in the dark. A few hours later, John wakes up in the middle of the night and, feeling hungry, grabs an ear of corn to eat. As he bites into it, he notices something strange: a human tooth lodged among the grains. Shocked, he throws everything on the ground and, bending down to clean it up, sees his son standing right in front of him. The boy quickly runs towards the cornfield, and John takes off after him without hesitation. Soon, he finds the boy's teddy bear lying among the leaves. Then he sees Michael crying and approaches, asking what he is doing there at that hour. The boy just fearfully asks his father to get rid of the scarecrow. John doesn't understand, and Michael, in a trance, continues repeating the phrase, "He knows I know." While John embraces his son trying to comfort him, he notices blood-stained straw stuck to the boy's back. When he removes it, Michael's body disappears before his eyes, leaving only his shirt on the ground. Stunned, John lifts his gaze towards the scarecrow, and what he sees paralyzes him. He sees himself tied to the stake, in place of the doll. In shock, he screams. During the day, we realize that it was all just a dream. Mary quickly wakes John, who asks where Michael is and if the boy is okay. Mary comments that the corn now seems healthy. Excited, John goes to check on his crop. Arriving there, he notices that all the corn is good, but he finds a ring stuck to one of the ears. Intrigued, he returns from the cornfield and, as he approaches the house, sees that the door is open. He rushes inside and finds Mary lying on the floor. Startled, he asks what happened, and she replies that Tommy is dead. Mary explains that he took his own life. Suddenly, she notices Tommy's ring on John's finger and begins to suspect, asking why he has it. In shock, she asks him to leave the house, but John tries to explain, saying he doesn't know what is happening, just begging her to trust him. John goes to the barn, grabs a hammer, and begins to remove the nails holding the scarecrow. During the process, he ends up hurting his hand, bleeding profusely, and decides to stop what he was doing. The silhouette of the scarecrow is shown in a dark and threatening manner. Upon returning home, John finds Sheriff Milton again, who sees him with his bloody hand and recommends he see a doctor. John refuses and only asks the sheriff to remove the piece of wood embedded in his hand. Milton mentions that Tommy received a call made from the Rollins house, and Mary confirms, saying she called him about some furniture she was selling. The sheriff comments that he finds it strange that Tommy took his own life, as he didn't seem depressed. After the conversation, Milton leaves, and the atmosphere between John and Mary becomes even tenser, leading to yet another conflict. Disturbed, John returns to the barn, this time grabbing an axe. He goes back to the location of the scarecrow, but upon arriving, he realizes it is no longer at the stake. Suddenly, he starts to feel ill and collapses on the ground, seeing blood dripping from a nearby ear of corn. At that moment, a mysterious little girl appears and asks him to be quiet. She begins to say that she thought her father could protect them, but he only protects the land and not the people. Suddenly, the little girl is struck by a scythe before his eyes, causing John to panic and run desperately. He returns home searching for his family but finds no one. Disoriented, he grabs a beer and, for a brief moment, sees the scarecrow standing beside him, but in the blink of an eye, it disappears. Unable to bear it any longer, John leaves the house and returns to the field, removes the scarecrow from the stake, and sets it on fire. At that moment, Mary and the children arrive by car. She asks what he is doing, and John responds that he needed to get rid of it. Mary, shaken, says it might be better to take a break, as John didn't even remember the couple's therapy session. He tries to explain, but says he can't, only repeating that he needs to get rid of the scarecrow. Mary, exhausted with the situation, loses her patience and decides to enter the house. John decides to go to Jude's trailer and knocks on the door, but who greets him is the same blonde woman from before. She invites him in and says her name is Miranda, revealing that she is Jude's wife. She asks if John's wife kicked him out, to which he replies that they just had an argument. He asks if Jude is around, but Miranda says he went to town. John thinks about leaving, but she notices his injured hand and decides to tend to the wound. Meanwhile, John opens up, and Miranda says he is under pressure, revealing that she saw him watching and then tries to seduce him. John gives in to temptation and has an intimate moment with her. The next day, Miranda tells him to leave before Jude arrives. On the way home, he notices that the scarecrow is back in the same place. When he arrives, his children are waiting for him outside. He asks about Mary, but Lindsay criticizes him for paying more attention to the cornfield than to his own family. They argue, and Mary confronts him, asking who he is cheating on her with. John yells at her to shut up, and Mary, indignant, tells him to leave. At that moment, Jude appears and asks if everything is okay, saying that his wife commented that John had stopped by. John explains that he burned the scarecrow, but the next day it reappeared. He states that 2 people died and that he is starting to suspect that the scarecrow is behind it. Jude invites him to talk to Miranda at his house. When they arrive, Miranda looks at John with desire but quickly disguises it. Jude comments that John will need her book, saying that it is pure black magic. John briefly flips through the book and asks how to get rid of the scarecrow, but Jude retorts that he has already received his blessings. John asserts that he never wanted that, and Jude raises his voice, saying that he planted his seed and now is reaping the fruits. Jude reveals the truth. The scarecrow is controlled by whoever is focused. and for this, John needs to rid himself of distractions, including his family. John runs back home, desperate, and as he exits the cornfield, he bumps into Sheriff Milton, startling him. Milton asks if his family is okay, and John replies yes. The sheriff asks what is happening, and John decides to take him to the barn. He shows him the place where he found the scarecrow, and they both descend into a darker area. John tries to explain that the scarecrow protects the land and him. Milton doesn't quite believe the story and says he will take him in, but a noise interrupts the conversation. John looks through the slats and suddenly, Jude appears and knocks out the sheriff. Jude says John should leave him there because he will be safe, explaining that he made a mistake. Just then, Mary arrives asking who he's talking to. John points to Jude, but Mary says there's nobody there. He claims that the scarecrow is responsible for all of this and shows her the book of black magic. However, upon opening the book, Mary sees a Bible in her hands. When she looks to the floor and sees someone fallen in the compartment, she runs away terrified and gets home, telling the children to hide. The family hides in one of the rooms, and then Mary watches through the crack in the door and, upon hearing noises, decides to escape with the children through the window. John soon enters the room and tries to stop them from fleeing, but they run out into the field, with John close behind. During the escape, Michael ends up getting separated from his mother. She searches for him but cannot find him. The boy wanders aimlessly through the cornfield until he stops upon thinking John is there. The cornfield starts to move frantically, and Michael takes off running. Meanwhile, John finds the bodies of Miranda and Jude in the field. Jude, already injured, says he tried to save his family and ended up dead, asking John to let the scarecrow take them. John ignores him and continues his search. Michael hides in the barn, and the doors close by themselves. While he is turned away, the scarecrow begins to rise slowly until they are face to face. The creature emits a terrifying scream, and Michael flees. He sneaks behind the tractor's wheels, but soon the creature reappears behind him, scythe in hand. Michael crawls on the ground and manages to climb to the second floor, knocking down the ladder behind him. Mary and Lindsay continue searching for the boy, while Michael watches the scarecrow through the wooden slats. The creature throws its scythe, almost hitting him, and someone puts the ladder back up. Suddenly, Sheriff Milton appears, but he is quickly pulled and killed by the scarecrow before Michael's terrified eyes, prompting him to scream. The family hears the scream and rushes to the barn. John arrives and orders the scarecrow to stop. The creature stares at him and, for a moment, obeys. But upon seeing Mary and Lindsay, it attempts to attack them. John tries to stop it, but is struck and falls to the ground unconscious. Lindsay searches for Michael until she sees the scarecrow with its hands covered in blood. The creature turns to her, grabs her neck, and presses her against the wall. As it is about to kill her, Mary cuts its arm with an axe. The scarecrow screams in pain, but soon regains its composure and turns towards them. At that moment, the tractor lights up, revealing Michael in a courageous act. John seizes the scarecrow and throws it in front of the tractor. Michael takes the opportunity and starts the machine, destroying the creature, but loses control of the vehicle. John pulls the boy away and hugs him, as he prepares to reunite. With his family, the still-alive scarecrow grabs him by the neck. In a swift act, Mary and the children attack the creature together, finally ending the curse of the scarecrow. At dawn, the family exits the barn relieved and returns home. The final scene shows the little girl who appeared in John's delusions observing from afar. She collects the remains of the scarecrow and takes them back to the same place where John found it.